Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to tackle complex subjects, filter out the noise, and give you those essential insights you need to be truly well informed. And today, we're diving headfirst into a world that's not just complicated, but absolutely central to how modern healthcare actually works: IT leadership and management. You've given us an amazing set of resources here. It really feels like a comprehensive guide, almost a masterclass on leading and driving change in this space, which, as we know, is evolving incredibly fast. Our goal isn't just to skim the surface or give you a summary. We want to dig in, extract those really potent, actionable ideas, maybe challenge a few common assumptions, and leave you with practical takeaways you can think about, maybe even use right away.
Exactly. And we're aiming to cut through some of the jargon that often surrounds healthcare IT. The idea is to provide a clear, actionable understanding of what it really takes, the core skills, the key responsibilities for leaders in this field today. We'll uncover some, I think, surprising facts and really connect the dots on how IT has shifted. It's not just a background support function anymore, not by a long shot. It's fundamentally a strategic imperative.
Absolutely. A strategic imperative. That sounds, well, big.
It is big because IT decisions now directly impact everything: patient safety, clinical workflows, financial health, even the organization's ability to compete and grow. It's woven into the very fabric of healthcare delivery.
Okay, so let's start there with that big picture. Strategy. We hear that word constantly. But what does strategy really mean for a hospital or a health system, and specifically for the IT department within it? How does IT stop being seen as just, a cost center and become that core strategic driver you
Yeah.
mentioned?
That's the fundamental shift, right? And it starts, perhaps surprisingly to some, with those high-level statements. The mission, the vision, the values, they might seem like, oh, just corporate speak on a plaque in the lobby.
Yeah, sometimes they can feel a bit disconnected from the day-to-day grind.
They can, but here's the insight for IT leaders. Every significant technical decision, every major system rollout, every new piece of software has to be viewed through the lens of those statements. Is this EHR choice truly aligned with our mission of patient-centered care? Does this telehealth platform actually help us achieve our vision of expanding access?
So it's like a filter.
Precisely,
Yeah.
a strategic filter. Take the mission that's the absolute core purpose. Why are we here? The best mission statements, honestly, are short, memorable, easily understood by everyone. Think about how powerful that is when making tough IT choices.
And the vision, that's the where are we going part.
Exactly, the aspirational future. Where does the organization want to be in 5, 10, 15 years? It sets the direction. And then critically, you have the values.
Things like compassion, service, respect, the cultural bedrock, especially in healthcare.
Yes, the cultural bedrock.
Oh,
What does the organization genuinely support, appreciate, reward? This isn't just about feeling good. It's incredibly practical for IT. If you roll out a system that forces clinicians to behave in ways that contradict core values, maybe it makes them feel like they're treating a number, not a person on her. Adoption will plummet. You'll face resistance. That's often where projects fail, even if the tech is sound.
that's a really important point. The human element, the cultural fit.
It's huge. And finally, you get to goals. These are the concrete steps to reach the vision, guided by the mission and values. We all know SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound.
Right, the classic framework.
Classic. But the real challenge for healthcare IT leaders isn't just ticking the SMART boxes. It's translating those often broad organizational goals, like, say, improve the patient experience or enhance clinical efficiency, into something tangible that an IT team can actually measure and achieve.
Like what, for
Yeah.
example?
Well, improved patient experience could translate into an IT goal like reduce patient portal login failures by 20% within 6 months. Or enhance clinical efficiency might become decrease the average time for physicians to retrieve lab results in the EHR by 15 seconds within Q3. It takes that high-level concept and makes it concrete, measurable, and directly linkable to IT's work. That translation is leadership.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You need that clear line of sight from the big vision down to the specific IT task. But how does the IT leader ensure that connection stays strong? Often IT can feel like its own world with its own priorities. Our source material really hammers this point. All projects are organizational and strategic, and IT is only one component. How do you keep IT truly embedded in that bigger picture?
You have to constantly ground IT in the business reality. It cannot operate in a vacuum in its own silo. The IT strategic plan isn't just a document the IT department creates for itself. It must be, as the source says, perfectly aligned with the overall organizational priorities.
Perfectly aligned. How do you achieve that in practice?
One really effective technique is creating what are often called crosswalks. Think of them as tables or spreadsheets, maybe even visual diagrams. They meticulously map the high-level organizational vision and strategic goals directly down to specific IT projects, initiatives, even ongoing operational tasks.
So you can literally see the connection.
Exactly. You draw the lines. This IT project directly supports this strategic goal. This system upgrade enables that operational objective. It's not just an exercise in documentation. It becomes a powerful tool for prioritization
How so?
because you can then objectively rank potential IT projects based on how well they align with and how significantly they contribute to those core organizational goals. You can even develop scoring systems. It takes some of the subjectivity, the loudest voice wins dynamic, out of the prioritization process. It brings transparency.
That sounds incredibly useful, especially when resources are tight, which they always are in healthcare.
Always. And this leads to another critical point, one that's often misunderstood. Operational goals must direct IT, not the other way around. The business needs, the clinical needs, the patient needs, those drive the technology choices.
Not IT deciding what tech everyone should use based on, I don't know, what's newest or easiest for IT to manage.
Precisely. The IT leader needs to be deeply, almost intuitively, plugged into those organizational goals. What is the hospital trying to achieve this year? What are the key clinical initiatives? What are the financial pressures? Understanding that context is paramount.
Why is that understanding so crucial?
Because it empowers the IT leader to do two things really well. First, to proactively recommend the right systems and technologies that will genuinely help achieve those goals. And second, just as importantly, to constructively challenge requests that seem, well, off track.
Challenge requests. That can be tricky politically, can't it?
It absolutely can be. But it's necessary. If a department head comes asking for a fancy new piece of software, but the IT leader, understanding the broader strategy, can't see how it clearly supports a core organizational goal, they have a responsibility to ask the hard questions. How does this help us improve patient safety? How does this align with our cost containment efforts? Is this the best use of our limited IT resources right now?
So it prevents IT from getting pulled in too many directions.
Exactly. It prevents those service gaps where the IT team is stretched thin, supporting projects or systems that aren't really moving the needle on the things that matter most to the organization's mission. Or worse, implementing things that might actually hinder progress towards the main goals. It's about shifting IT from being seen as just an order taker, build this, install that, to being a true strategic partner, co-creating solutions.
That makes sense. Being a strategic partner, not just a service department. Okay, so we've established this framework. Aligning IT strategy with the organization's mission, vision, values, and goals, using tools like crosswalks for clarity. But, plans are one thing, reality is another. How do leaders actually know if their IT efforts are working? How do they measure success and effectiveness on the ground, especially when things are so complex?
Right, moving from the plan to the proof. This is where measurement becomes absolutely critical. And one of the core tools here is the Service Level Agreement, or SLA.
FLAs, we hear about those a lot. What's the key takeaway for healthcare IT?
The key is that they provide a formal framework for tracking service performance against agreed-upon targets. Things like system uptime, help desk response time, issue resolution time. But just having an SLA isn't enough. You need to visualize that performance.
How do you do that effectively?
Yeah, dashboards are common, of course. But even more powerful, especially for tracking quality and stability over time, are control charts. These are statistical tools often used in quality improvement that plot performance data over time. They include an upper control limit, UCL, and a lower control limit, LCL.
Okay, what do those limits tell you?
They represent the boundaries of expected or acceptable variation in the process. Think of them like statistical guardrails. If your system's response time suddenly jumps above the UCL or error rates dip below the LCL if lower is better, it's a signal. It tells you something fundamental has likely changed in the system or the process. It's not just random noise or a one-off blip.
So it helps you spot real problems brewing.
Exactly. It allows you to detect shifts, trends, or unusual variations early before they become major crises impacting patient care or frustrating clinicians to the breaking point. It brings a level of statistical rigor to performance monitoring.
That statistical view is interesting. But then we get to that example in our source material that really jumped out at me. It talks about achieving 99% uptime for a system, which sounds great, right?
Seems fantastic on paper, yes.
But then it says, customers, however, report that they struggle with the average of 1.75 hours of system downtime each week. That's a huge disconnect, isn't it? 99% uptime still means nearly 2 hours of pain per week for users.
It's a massive disconnect, and it perfectly illustrates the critical difference between purely objective technical metrics like that 99% figure and the subjective assessment of effectiveness by the actual users, the clinicians, the staff.
So the numbers can lie, or at least not tell the whole story.
They don't tell the whole story, especially in healthcare. That 1% downtime, which allows for the 1.75 hours per week, might be perfectly acceptable according to the SLA negotiated perhaps months or years ago, but in a 247 hospital environment where every second can count, the expectation for critical systems is far, far higher. We're often talking about needing 99.99% or even 99.99%, the five nines availability.
Wow, 5 nines. That's a tiny fraction of downtime.
It is, because that 1.75 hours a week isn't just an abstract number. It translates directly into very real frustration for a nurse trying to chart medications, a doctor trying to access patient history during an emergency, a registrar trying to admit someone. It means lost productivity, potential workarounds that introduce errors, and fundamentally, it can compromise patient care. The human impact is immediate and profound, and it's often completely missed if you're only looking at that top-line percentage.
So how do IT leaders bridge that gap? How do they get beyond the numbers to understand that lived experience?
They have to actively, relentlessly seek out customer feedback, and not just through one channel. It needs to be multifaceted. For smaller groups of key stakeholders, maybe department heads or clinical leads, face-to-face interviews can be incredibly insightful. You get nuance, you build relationships.
What about getting out there onto the floors?
Absolutely essential. That's what's often called unit rounding or environmental rounding. This isn't just a casual walkthrough. It's about intentionally going into the user environment, the emergency department, the operating room, the clinic floor, and observing how people actually use the systems.
Seeing it in action, warts and all.
Exactly. You might see a nurse using a sticky note workaround because a function is too cumbersome. You might witness a physician sighing in frustration, waiting for a screen to load. You might overhear conversations about system slowness. These are invaluable real-time insights you simply cannot get from a report or a formal survey. It's about stepping into their shoes, understanding their workflow, their pressures.
Okay, rounding makes sense for direct observation. What about gathering feedback more broadly?
For larger groups, you can use more traditional methods like town hall meetings, focus groups carefully facilitated, of course, or telephone and web-based surveys. These can give you quantitative data and broader sentiment.
And technology itself can help here too, right?
Yes, increasingly so. Embedding simple, easily accessible feedback tools directly within the applications can be very effective. A little button that says feedback or report issue. It allows users to provide immediate comments right when they encounter a problem or have an idea without the friction of having to remember it later, find a website, or call the help desk. Lowering the barrier to providing feedback is key.
So you gather all this feedback, the objective data, the rounding observations, the survey results, the in-app comments. What do you do with it? How does it connect back to making the IT department better?
This rich mix of quantitative and qualitative data directly informs what the source calls departmental effectiveness. This goes beyond just system performance. It includes those crucial interpersonal metrics reported by customers.
Like how helpful the help desk staff are?
Precisely. Or, critically, response time. Our source makes a powerful point. In a fast-paced clinical setting, any response time greater than just a couple of minutes is likely to cause dissatisfaction. If a nurse calls with an urgent problem and gets put on hold for 5 minutes, that's a failure, regardless of how knowledgeable the eventual support person is.
So it's about the whole interaction, the whole experience with IT.
Yes. And this customer-centric thinking is really the foundation of customer relationship management, or CRM, applied to the IT context. The source describes CRM as a comprehensive systems approach for IT. It's not just about implementing CRM software, though that can be part of it.
What is it about then?
It's about embedding a customer service mindset deep within the IT department's culture. It involves training IT staff, everyone from help desk analysts to network engineers to application developers in crucial soft skills. Empathy, active listening, clear communication, timely follow-up, and effective problem resolution. It's about building positive, collaborative relationships with the users they support, whether those users are internal clinicians and staff or critical external partners like vendors.
So CRM transforms IT from just being a technical service provider
To being perceived as a trusted, responsive partner in achieving the organization's goals. It builds bridges, fosters goodwill, and ultimately makes IT far more effective because users feel heard and supported.
Okay, that's a really comprehensive view of measuring success, blending the hard data with the human experience through things like rounding and CRM. Now, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked strategy, we've talked measurement, but the day-to-day reality of healthcare IT involves juggling a lot of complex initiatives, big projects, software upgrades, infrastructure changes, managing external companies. How do effective leaders keep all those moving parts synchronized? How do they guide the ship through those often choppy waters?
That's where the discipline of project management, PM, becomes absolutely indispensable. It's not just a nice to have, it's a core competency for any mature healthcare IT organization.
What's the essence of PM in this context?
At its heart, PM is the discipline of planning, organizing, motivating, and controlling resources, people, time, money, technology, to achieve specific goals for what the source calls temporary endeavors.
Temporary endeavors, meaning projects specifically.
Exactly. Projects have a defined start and a defined end, and they produce a unique product, service, or result. This distinguishes them from ongoing operations, which are repetitive and continuous, like running the data center or managing the network day to day.
And these projects in healthcare IT can be huge, right?
They can be massive, incredibly complex, and carry enormous risk. Think about implementing a new electronic health record system across an entire hospital network. That's a multi-year, multi-million-dollar undertaking involving thousands of users, intricate technical integrations, significant workflow changes, and intense regulatory scrutiny.
Or upgrading critical infrastructure without disrupting patient care.
Or rolling out a new telehealth platform across dozens of clinics, ensuring it's secure, reliable, and easy for both patients and providers to use. These aren't small tasks.
So project management provides the structure to handle that complexity.
It provides the framework, the methodologies, the tools, and the techniques. And when you have multiple projects that are linked together, maybe they depend on each other, you start talking about program management. And if you want a centralized view and control over all the projects and programs across the entire organization, aligning them with strategic objectives and managing resources effectively, that's project portfolio management, PPM, sometimes called enterprise PPM or EPPM.
And the person steering each individual project is the project manager?
Yes, the project manager role is absolutely vital. They are the ones responsible for juggling the classic triple constraint: scope, what needs to be delivered, schedule, when it needs to be delivered, and cost, how much it will cost, while also managing risks, quality, communication, stakeholders. It's a demanding role, especially given the high stakes in healthcare where project delays or failures can have serious consequences.
It really sounds like it. Now, something that strikes me from the source material is how heavily healthcare IT relies on outside companies, on vendors. It seems like you can't do much without them.
That's largely true. The healthcare IT landscape is dominated by specialized vendors, providing everything from the core EHR systems to niche departmental software, hardware, cloud services, consulting. It's a complex ecosystem.
Which makes managing those relationships incredibly important. It's not just about picking a vendor and signing a contract, is it?
Not at all. That's just the beginning. Effective vendor management is crucial, and it's distinct from vendor selection. Selection is the process of choosing the right partner. Management is the ongoing work after the contract is signed.
What does that ongoing management involve?
The source defines it nicely. It's about working with vendors on contract performance, schedules and costs, product functionality and support, and maintenance agreements in order to mutually benefit both organizations. The key phrase there is mutually benefit. It needs to be a partnership, not an adversarial relationship.
But finding that mutual benefit can be tough, can't it? Especially when budgets are tight. There must be pitfalls to avoid.
Oh, definitely. The source highlights several common ones. First, as we just mentioned, don't confuse selection with management. You need dedicated effort for the ongoing relationship. Second, a huge mistake is selecting vendors based primarily on the lowest price.
The cheapest option isn't always the best.
Rarely in complex IT. A lower initial cost can easily be wiped out by poor performance, inadequate support, unexpected integration costs, or a vendor who simply isn't invested in your success. You need to prioritize value and a strong, collaborative, mutually beneficial relationship over just the sticker price. Think long-term partnership.
What else should leaders watch out for?
Another pitfall is forgetting to continuously evaluate how the vendor relationships are actually affecting your business. Are they delivering on their promises? Is the support responsive? Are they innovating? Are they easy to work with? You need mechanisms to track performance against the contract and against your evolving needs.
The source mentions 10 vendor management principles. Any key ones stand out?
Several are critical. Using a formal project management methodology when working with a vendor on implementations or major upgrades is essential for structure. Having rigorous formal documentation for all changes, especially scope changes, is paramount to avoid disputes and cost overruns. Sounds bureaucratic, but it's vital.
Why is that documentation so critical? Seems like it could slow things down.
It might seem that way, but imagine a multi-million-dollar EHR upgrade. A seemingly small, undocumented change requested by one department could have unforeseen impacts on integration, workflow, testing, and budget. Formal documentation ensures everyone understands what's agreed upon, what the impact is, and who approved it. It prevents scope creep, manages expectations, and protects both the healthcare organization and the vendor. It actually builds trust and allows for more controlled, secure progress in these complex environments.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about clarity and accountability.
Exactly. And clear roles and responsibilities, both internally and with the vendor, are also crucial.
Yeah.
Who is the primary contact? Who has decision-making authority? Who handles escalations? Defining this up front avoids confusion and delays later.
So managing projects, managing vendors,
Yeah.
it all involves a lot of communication, often to very busy people like executives or clinicians who don't have time for lengthy reports. How do you communicate effectively in that environment?
That's where tools designed for concise, clear communication are invaluable. Our source highlights one particularly effective tool, SBAC.
SBARC, what does that stand for?
It stands for Situation, Background, Assessment, Recommendation, and Communication. It originated in the military and healthcare clinical settings for urgent communication, but it's incredibly useful for initiating IT projects or communicating status updates too.
How does it work in an IT context?
It provides a structured way to present information quickly and clearly. Situation. What is the immediate issue or proposal? Example, we need to upgrade the radiology PCS system. Background. What is the relevant context? E.g., the current system is end of life, support ends in 6 months, and it lacks features needed for new imaging modalities. Assessment. What is your analysis of the situation? E.g., failure to upgrade poses significant operational risks and limits clinical capabilities. We've evaluated 3 potential solutions. Recommendation. What do you propose? We recommend proceeding with vendor X's solution with an estimated cost of Y and timeline of Z. Communication. Who needs to be informed or involved? E.g., seeking approval from the steering committee. Key stakeholders include radiology, finance, and infrastructure teams.
Ah, I see. It forces you to be brief and hit the key points right away.
Exactly. The source calls it an easy way to document a situation and a proposed approach to a very wide audience. It's perfect for those initial project proposals or executive summaries where you need to get the core message across quickly and effectively, framing the key goals, objectives, and potential paths forward. It ensures everyone starts from the same basic understanding.
That structure seems really helpful. Now, you mentioned seeking approval from the steering committee. This raises a fundamental question about governance. In this complex world of IT projects, vendor relationships, and strategic alignment, who actually makes the big decisions? Who ensures IT stays aligned with the broader organization, especially when different departments might have competing priorities?
That's the absolutely critical function of IT steering committees. They are the primary governance body for IT in many healthcare organizations.
How common are they?
Very common, and generally seen as a mark of mature IT management. Our source cites data suggesting nearly 72% of IT organizations have some form of IT steering committee. Their existence signals that IT is taken seriously at an organizational level.
And what's their main job? What do they actually do?
Their core focus, according to the source, is on IT strategic planning, project prioritization, and project approval. They are the forum where major IT initiatives are vetted, debated, and ultimately given the green light or not. They ensure that proposed projects align with the overall strategy we discussed earlier, and they make the tough calls about which projects get funded and prioritized when resources are limited.
So they hold the purse strings, essentially.
They often play a major role in budget allocation for IT projects, yes. But it's more than just financial control. They provide oversight, ensure cross-departmental coordination, and mediate those inevitable conflicts when, say, the cardiology department wants a new system, at the same time the lab needs an upgrade, and there isn't budget for both immediately.
What makes an IT steering committee successful? Are there key strategies?
Absolutely. Several factors are key. First, having a clear written charter is essential. What is the committee's exact scope? What are its responsibilities? What authority does it have? Who are the members? How are decisions made? This clarity prevents ambiguity and turf wars.
And the scope should be broad.
Yes, the source emphasizes establishing a corporate-wide scope. It shouldn't just be focused on one department or one type of technology. It needs that enterprise view to make truly strategic decisions and effectively mediate priorities across the entire organization.
Who typically sits on these committees?
Membership is crucial. You need representation from key operational and clinical areas leaders who understand the business needs. Finance should be there. Clinical leadership like the Chief Medical Officer, CMO, or Chief Nursing Officer, CNO, or perhaps a Chief Medical Information Officer, CMIO is vital. And of course, IT leadership, typically the CIO.
So the CIO is usually on it. Should the CIO chair the committee?
This is where our source offers a really interesting, perhaps counterintuitive piece of advice. For maximum effectiveness and to reinforce IT's role as an organizational resource, it's often best if someone other than the CIO chairs the committee.
Really? Why is that?
Think about the message it sends. If the Chief Operating Officer, COO, or the CMIO, or maybe even the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, chairs the IT Steering Committee, it signals that IT strategy and investment are not just IT's concern, they are core organizational concerns. It positions IT as a critical shared resource, essential to everyone's success. It promotes broader ownership and collaboration, rather than letting IT decisions be perceived as happening solely within the IT department.
That's a subtle but powerful point about signaling and ownership. Okay, so we have strategy, measurement, project execution, vendor partnerships, and governance through steering committees. But healthcare is also an environment with inherent risks, patient safety risks, data security risks, financial risks, and it operates under intense ethical and regulatory scrutiny. How do IT leaders build resilience and ensure they're operating ethically and legally?
This is absolutely paramount. You can have the best strategy and execution, but if you fail on risk management or compliance, the consequences can be catastrophic. Let's start with risk management.
How do you approach risks systematically in IT?
A common framework involves assessing risks along two key dimensions: magnitude or impact. How bad would it be if this risk materialized? And likelihood or probability. How likely is it to actually happen?
And you plot this somehow.
Often, yes. You can use a risk matrix, like the one shown in Figure 9.5 in our source material. It typically has likelihood on one axis and magnitude on the other, creating quadrants.
Yeah.
Risks falling into the high likelihood, high magnitude quadrant are obviously the top priority.
So things like a major cybersecurity breach or a critical system failure during peak hours.
Exactly. Those are the risks that demand immediate attention and robust contingency plans. What is our plan B, plan C, plan D? If this critical system goes down, how do we recover? How do we maintain essential functions? You have to plan for failure, because in complex systems, failures will happen eventually.
And it's not just about reacting, right? It's about preventing risks, too.
Absolutely. That's risk mitigation. What proactive steps can we take to reduce the likelihood or the potential impact of a risk? This involves both internal efforts like improving security protocols, conducting regular system testing, training staff, and external efforts, often through contractual agreements with vendors, ensuring they meet certain security standards or performance guarantees. Risk mitigation is a continuous, collaborative process.
You mentioned financial risk, too. How does that play into IT leadership?
Financial risk management is increasingly critical for IT leaders. They aren't just technologists, they manage significant budgets. They need core financial skills. They need to understand the difference between capital expenses, big investments like new servers, software licenses, major implementations, which are often depreciated over time, and operating expenses, the ongoing day-to-day costs like salaries, maintenance contracts, cloud subscription fees.
Why is that distinction important?
Because they are budgeted and accounted for differently, and they have different implications for financial planning and return on investment. IT leaders need to be able to build a business case for investments, often using ROI, return on investment calculations. They need to understand budget reports, track spending against forecasts, and engage in long-range capital planning, especially as healthcare shifts towards value-based care models, where IT investments need to demonstrate clear clinical and financial returns.
So IT leaders need to speak the language of finance.
They absolutely do. And effective budget risk management isn't just about getting a budget approved. It's about negotiating an effective budget from the start, realistically accounting for needs. It's about planning for the unexpected by building in a risk contingency budget funds set aside for unforeseen problems or urgent needs. And it might even involve maintaining multiple budget scenarios to adapt quickly if revenues fluctuate or critical new requirements emerge mid-year.
Okay, managing operational and financial risk is key. What about the ethical and legal side? Healthcare is so heavily regulated.
Non-negotiable. Adherence to ethical business principles and legal regulatory compliance is fundamental. IT leaders operate within what the source calls a complex web of standards and regulations that are constantly evolving.
Like IPAT in the US.
iPay is the big one in the U.S. for patient privacy and data security, yes. But there are many others. State-level regulations, data breach notification laws, rules around electronic prescribing, specific requirements for medical device integration, international data protection laws like GDPR if the organization deals with international patients or data. It's incredibly complex.
Does the IT leader need to be an expert in all of that?
Not necessarily an expert in every single clause,
Hmm.
but they need a strong foundational understanding, and crucially, they need to know when to seek expert advice and have easy, reliable access to those experts. This usually means working very closely with the organization's corporate compliance officer and its legal counsel. They cannot afford to operate in isolation on these matters.
And it's not just about avoiding penalties, is it?
No, it's much deeper than that. It's about safeguarding sensitive patient information, which is a fundamental ethical obligation. It's about maintaining the trust of patients and the public. It's about protecting the organization's reputation, which can be severely damaged by a major compliance failure or data breach. Adhering to a clear code of business ethics also ensures decisions are made in the best interest of the organization and its patients, free from personal conflicts of interest, and it fosters a culture where staff feel safe reporting potential issues.
Building that culture of integrity seems vital. So we've covered strategy, measurement, execution, governance, risk, ethics. It's a huge portfolio of responsibilities. This brings us to the people who actually make all of this happen, the IT staff. After building this robust, ethical, strategically aligned foundation, how do leaders ensure their teams are equipped? What does it mean for staff competency and professional development in this demanding field?
This is where everything comes together, because even the best strategy or technology is useless without skilled, motivated people to implement and manage it. Ensuring staff competency is critical, and it's a moving target because technology changes so rapidly.
So it's not just about hiring people with the right technical skills initially.
No, that's just the start. It's about continuous learning and development. Mastering the necessary technical skills for their specific roles, whether that's network administration, cybersecurity, database management, application support, clinical informatics, is obviously essential. But it's also about developing those crucial soft skills.
Like communication, teamwork.
Exactly. Collaboration, teamwork, problem-solving, adaptability, customer service skills, the ability to communicate complex technical issues to non-technical users. These are just as important as technical prowess in a healthcare setting where IT staff constantly interact with clinicians, administrators, and patients.
So how do leaders foster this continuous development? What kind of opportunities should they provide?
It needs to be a multi-pronged approach. Formal training programs and internal in-service sessions are important for specific skills or new system rollouts. Supporting staff in obtaining relevant professional certifications is also key.
Which certifications are valuable in healthcare IT?
There are several. CPHMs, Certified Professional in Healthcare Information and Management Systems, is a big one specifically for healthcare IT professionals. PMP, Project Management Professional, is vital for those involved in projects. ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, certifications are great for service management processes. And certifications related to change management like ADCAR can be really beneficial given how much change IT introduces. Cybersecurity certifications are also increasingly critical.
What about learning beyond formal training and certs?
Absolutely. Encouraging attendance at industry conferences and workshops allows staff to learn about emerging trends, network with peers, and bring back new ideas. Fostering mentorship relationships, both formal and informal, can be incredibly powerful for knowledge transfer and career growth.
And pushing people a bit.
Yes, providing stretch goals or assignments that push individuals slightly outside their comfort zone can be a fantastic way to accelerate learning and development. It shows you trust them and are invested in their growth. All of these things contribute not only to competency, but also to staff retention. Good people want to work where they feel they can learn and grow.
That makes perfect sense. Investing in your people pays dividends. Now, one final area mentioned in the source is documentation. Sometimes that feels like the less glamorous part of IT. Why is it highlighted as so important?
It might seem less glamorous, but comprehensive documentation is the bedrock of a well-managed, resilient, and efficient IT operation. It's absolutely crucial.
What kind of documentation are we talking about?
Several types. System documentation includes things like functional requirements, design specifications, architecture diagrams, data flow charts, basically, how the system is built and how it's supposed to work. Operational documentation covers the day-to-day running of things. Standard operating procedures, SOPs, for tasks like backups, user account management, system monitoring, and, critically, disaster recovery plans.
And departmental policies?
Yes, departmental policies and procedures define how the IT department itself functions. Things like the process for handling service requests, change management procedures, security policies, acceptable use policies.
Why is having all this written down so vital?
The source describes it as creating a knowledge base for auditing and use by teams. Think about it. Consistency. Ensure if tasks are performed the same way every time, reducing errors. Training. Makes it much easier to onboard new team members. Troubleshooting. Provides essential information when things go wrong. Auditing and compliance. Demonstrates that processes are defined and followed, which is essential for regulatory compliance. Collaboration. Creates a shared understanding among team members and even with customers, users, about how things work and what to expect. Business continuity. Ensures critical knowledge isn't lost if key personnel leave. Good documentation reduces ambiguity, enhances efficiency, supports compliance, and ultimately builds trust both within the IT team and with the rest of the organization. It's the institutional memory.
Wow. Okay. When you put it all together, like the strategy, the measurement, the project and vendor management, the governance, the risk and ethics, the people development, the documentation, it's clear that leading healthcare IT is an incredibly complex and demanding role. We've really taken a deep dive into this world today. It's so much more than just keeping the servers running or fixing computer glitches. It's deeply strategic, intensely people focused, and carries immense responsibility. It's about vision, influence, building resilience, and fostering genuine partnerships across the entire organization.
Indeed it is. Today's healthcare IT leaders, the truly effective ones, need this unique, multifaceted blend of skills. They need that sharp strategic acumen to align IT with the mission. They need profound customer centricity to understand and meet user needs. They require strong project and vendor management discipline to execute complex initiatives. They must have robust financial literacy to manage budgets and demonstrate value. And underpinning it all is an unwavering commitment to ethical practice, legal compliance, and the continuous professional development of their teams and themselves. It really is about being an expert guide not just to the technology itself, but guiding the entire organization towards its future by strategically leveraging IT as a critical asset. The ultimate goal, always, is to ensure technology reliably and safely serves the core mission of patient care.
That's a powerful summary. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, a question for you, our listener. Considering all these essential elements of healthcare IT leadership and management, what stands out most to you? Where might you begin to apply some of these insights, whether in your current role or how you interact with IT in your organization? Is there one specific area, maybe improving strategic alignment, maybe focusing more on the customer experience, perhaps strengthening vendor partnerships, or even just bolstering documentation that you'll explore further to enhance your own impact or your organization's impact in this constantly shifting critical landscape of healthcare IT?